Okay.
Thanks, Doug. Kathy? Is she unmuted?
Yeah, she's on mute.
Moved here was proximity to the Lower Mainland and primarily to my mom, who lives in West Van, and it's easier for me to get there from here than it is to go through the city from my former house. Obviously, affordability was a big factor, and then now as we've lived here for 2.5 years, accessibility to wilderness is, I think, a real drawing factor for me.
Thanks, Kathy. Andre?
Sure. Am I on now?
Yep.
Okay, great. I was born in Nanaimo, spent my whole life growing up here, and then through university managed to see most of the country and live in various big cities all across the country in my 20s. I'm very happy to be back. I love Vancouver Island, and I love Nanaimo, kind of the geographic and services center of the island. And I also like that Nanaimo, frankly, isn't as polished as maybe some of the other big cities. I like that it's a diamond in the rough with more potential than I think most communities with similar size have.
Thanks, Andre. Who's next here? How about Chris B?
I just want to mention Andre's COVID beard. That's looking pretty good, Andre. 20 years now here in Nanaimo. Affordability brought us here in the first place. We couldn't afford anything in the Lower Mainland, and that brought us over to the island. And we're very happy for that. It's still relatively affordable compared to the Lower Mainland. We raised 4 sons here in the city, and there is an endless amount of activities and sports and clubs available to them. So from a family perspective, Nanaimo is a great little city to raise your children. The geography, and a few people have talked about it, we're far enough away from the Lower Mainland, but close enough to access the services. And certainly so much is here as well, but it's only a couple-hour drive from Victoria. And then the diversity of this city has changed over the 20 years that we've been here for the good. We see more and more sort of broader representation of cultural groups here in the city, and we're happy with that. So the diversity is a plus for us. Thanks.
Okay, how about Jolene Green next?
Well, I moved to Nanaimo 15 years ago. I had been a resident in the Kootenays for a number of years. Moved to Vancouver to go to university. When I graduated from my degree, I was working for a number of companies in consulting, but I was not a city girl. I wanted more of a rural type community, and the Lower Mainland was not it. So I looked at a number of communities, from Kelowna to Kamloops to Soyuz, Oliver, and then my girlfriend said, why don't you look at Vancouver Island? And I said, really? Okay. So I did come to Vancouver Island. I wanted to buy a business, so I bought a business that would allow me to go through my consulting work as well as operate my business, and I did that for a period of about 9 years. And then started working back with Community Futures again. And the reason why I came here was because I saw that there was a lot of opportunity around operating and running a business. There was a real, at the time that I moved here, the fast ferries were operating, and because I was doing work in the Lower Mainland, it gave me close proximity to go back and forth to the Lower Mainland, to go to the airport and fly and do the places that I need to go to and do. And as well, the housing prices, to be able to buy a house and a business in an affordable manner was great. And the type of business I was in, I was looking for kind of a genteel, I didn't want to have kind of the party scene and everything else. So this community led to that. And it was a great springboard to expand kind of my opportunities here. So that's why I came to the community. And I liked it because it had that kind of small city, rural feel, and it had amenities that a lot of smaller communities didn't have, proximity to the bigger city and the airports and things.
Thanks, Jolene. Next, Robin.
Yeah, I kind of sound like a bit of a broken record, but the natural beauty close to the harbor, the mountains, I think proximity to the bigger cities, accessibility, our airport's getting better, and affordability, obviously, and an increasingly interesting and diverse community. And I've managed to develop a really great social network. I should qualify, I live in Victoria, but I'm looking to move to Nanaimo for all these reasons I've saying. And I do see potential for growth in a number of areas. It's right for expanding a number of kind of different sectors. And I think once we're over the COVID bump, I think we'll see it blossom. But that's pretty well it. I didn't add anything any more unique than anyone else in that regard.
Thanks, Robbie. Bob Moss.
Okay, Jim, I don't know whether you can hear me or not.
We can.
You can?
We can.
Yeah, we're okay. We can hear you.
You're good, Bob.
Perfect, thank you. So there's not much I can add to what's already been said, but I just want to make a note of kind of the size issue, because from my perspective and our family's perspective, we think that Nanaimo is the perfect size. It's big enough to have all of the amenities that people want and need, cultural, medical, business, critical mass, but small enough that we've still got a great community spirit and all of the benefits of the smaller community. So I really think that's a big part of our selling proposition going forward in terms of what attracted us.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Next we have Jason. You just joined us, Jason, so we're just asking why you live here and what you like about Nanaimo. You there?
Hey, Jason, can you hear us? Oh, try again. Jason? Maybe we'll come back.
Who else? Did I miss anybody else? Oh, Amber. Yeah. Amber, it's your turn.
Thank you. I can hardly add anything more to what's already been said. So I think, one of the big things for me is I moved here many, many years ago, and I moved here because I visited from Nanaimo and wanted to live here. And I know at the time, Nanaimo did not appeal to me to move. Like, I wouldn't have moved for any other reason other than we were getting ready to thought, let's try it here. But I did fall in love with the city, and I love it now, and I love the fact that it's very close to Vancouver, where I have a lot of family. And we raised 2 daughters here, and 2 of our daughters, though, did end up going to the Queensland. So I was speaking with my daughters, as I often do, and I kind of look at it from their perspective, and I find that really young people, in their early 20s, find the big city much more appealing, whereas I think people more into thinking about having a family, either starting a family. I think those people are really thinking so I think it really does depend on demographics, because my daughters tell me that, there's just not much to do here. I mean, for me, there's enough to do, but I think the kinds of things they're looking to do are not here. So I think we do appeal to a certain demographic, and I think in recent years, due to the affordability issue, we have become much more a city that even young people are looking at, because they can't even dream of having a place to so we're seeing a lot of and I really can't add to anything more. The diversity factor is certainly important to me, and I know it was always mentioned by my daughters as they were growing up here that, they wish there was more diversity here, and I see that we're getting more and more diversity. So I think but for me, it's the perfect sized city with all the urban amenities that I need, and the best part of it is that, we're not so congested. That's really important to me. I can get to work. I think anybody in Nanaimo can get to work within 10 minutes or so. I have a walk with mine, see the things and that's
Okay, so I don't think there's anybody else other than myself. I'll try to put a bit of a different slant on this because probably like most, I'm one of the few that was actually born here 70 plus years ago, and I've lived here all but 10 of those years. And the thing I would like to point out is because I was involved in a small business for all that time, a smaller community is a beneficial factor for involving community involvement to the success of your business. So if we were in a larger community, the involvement that we did as husband and wife in the business would probably not have paid the dividends that it has over the years in Nanaimo. So thank you. Okay, take it away, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Jason, I see you're back on. Can you hear us? And is your microphone working okay? Do you want to do that round? No? Can you check in the bottom of your screen on the left-hand side? Have you tried all those technical troubleshooting things? Oh, I see. Can I just ask who the administrator is? Is that you, Bill?
It is, yeah. So just,
You might be able to manually unmute Jason from your side.
yeah, I was trying to do that, but doesn't seem to
Okay.
work.
Okay, because
Sorry, Jason.
No.
Jason
No.
can try calling in with the phone.
Jason, you could call in. Do you have the number? We could send you the phone number.
Okay. Yeah, and sometimes if you go to your computer's controls, you need to identify which microphone it needs to be using.
Can you hear this?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you are.
Just didn't need a microphone, I guess.
Bravo.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry I'm late to the party here. I think the question about working in Nanaimo, for me, I actually live in Ladysmith. I think one of the things I find valuable about Nanaimo and the community is, quite honestly, working with Vivi and Bahia, the city, and working with so many of the different businesses throughout the community that everybody seems to be, from what I can tell, on the same page. So I think that business collective being on the same page is important. I think there's a huge amount of potential in Nanaimo for its future, the amount of available land, the ability for that land and opportunity to be diverse in how this group and how the land planning goes for the future. I think it has a huge amount of opportunity to grow in whatever sectors the groups feel and find reason to promote. So that for me is working with the port. We see that opportunity vibrantly. And we welcome the opportunity to work with this group and look forward to what comes of it.
Thanks, Jason. Carry on, Lee.
Okay, super. Thanks so much. And I know it seems a little simplistic because we're on video, so we had to, shift gears in terms of being able to work through some of these exercises. And I apologize if it seems a little repetitive. I promise you it's not, because we're looking for different things as we go through this process. But I want to challenge you a little bit with this next question to think about, because you're such great champions for Nanaimo, imagine for a moment that there was another community that you might want to be in. If you weren't in Nanaimo, the question I have for you then, and if we can do this roundtable exercise again and go through one more time, maybe we can start with Emmerich this time and then work our way backwards a little bit. But if you were not in Nanaimo, where would you live and why, objectively?
Hammett?
Are you thinking? She's on
I
mute.
think she's muted. There you are.
Oh, we had you for a second, Emery.
Try it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So for me, the reason really is being close to my family. So I think I would live in Vancouver. My parents live there. My daughters live there. We have lots of friends and family there. There's lots to see and do there. So I think, if I'm being really honest, if I didn't live in Nanaimo, I would be living in the Lower Mainland.
Okay, so still in the area of British Columbia.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on the list then will be, let's go to Zenny.
Hi. Gosh, that's a hard one. If it was anywhere in the world, I would probably be back in Belize. But trying to think realistically, I couldn't afford to live in Vancouver, but that's where I'd want to be, is in the West End. I used to live there many, many years ago. And I found the West End was just a walkable, livable area to live. So, but affordability would be an issue. Yeah, but that's where I would go if I could.
Okay, that's perfect.
Oh, and that's because my granddaughter's over there.
That's a good reason.
Okay, next will be Dave.
Hi. I recently had to decide this very question. So I was living in Alberta. I'm from Victoria, and so we had to decide where we would want to live. And we were selling our house, so we decided we wanted to live in Nanaimo. But if we weren't living here, we would have picked Victoria. Because that's where basically where I grew up. But Nanaimo was a more affordable choice since we decided to come here.
Thanks, Dave. And Andre.
I think our Vixen communities that have similar profiles. I actually think the two best areas, especially when you look at where the retirees are going, are Vancouver Island and the Okanagan, and I'd probably pick a community in one of those two regions. If it was on the island, probably Up Island, Port Nicholson area, and if it was the Okanagan, something like Penticton or Kelowna, very similar, size communities, very similar feel. And when you look at those communities, they're probably more akin to our type.
Thanks, Andre. Doug, you're next. There you are. Now, can you hear us, Doug? Okay, we'll skip over Doug for now and go to Chris.
There he is.
Oh, he's on
there
now. You hear us, Doug?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. California.
California.
Perfect. Why?
It's warmer. There's lots of the same. There's lots of the same things as here. Better climate, I think. So there's a lot of, and it would be on the coast, I guess, is maybe also a helpful thing to offer.
Thanks, Doug. Next, Chris.
If I couldn't be in Nanaimo, I have two areas that I would look at. One is Banfield. Love the open water, love Vancouver Island, love the fishing out on the west coast of the island. And then the other would be Ottawa, and it's only because I was born and raised there, and I still have a number of siblings who live in that area. So it would be back to the center of politics for me.
Thanks, Chris. Jolene.
It's interesting because having this thought a lot. And so 5 to 7 years from now in retirement, I'm kind of thinking, where will we go? And I love Vancouver Island. Optimally, I'd love to be able to stay here, but affordability is part of that. If we were able to sell our home and move to somewhere that has more affordable housing than Vancouver Island's housing is, and then be able to have a more of a jet setter lifestyle in the sense of, you know, flying and going to Europe and doing things that I'd really love to do. I think that because my children live, I have a daughter and grandbaby and son-in-law in the Kootenays, I think that I would have a tendency, I want to be close proximity to an airport. So we've been looking at the thoughts of Castlegar or Nelson, that area, or probably towards the North Shuswap around Chase, Sorrento area. So those are kind of the two areas that we've been looking at, or looking at a more rural community on Vancouver Island where real estate might be a bit less. So maybe whether it's Chemainus or maybe heading up more towards Black Creek, that area.
Next, Jolene. Bob? Trying to unmute you, Bob. There we are.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. So thank you. Canada is our country of choice. BC is our province of choice. And Vancouver Island is our region of choice. So if not Nanaimo, probably Fox Valley or Victoria, primarily for lifestyle reasons.
Thanks, Bob. Robin? Hang on, we're just trying to unmute you here.
Yeah, I guess if you guys banned me from Nanaimo, I would just stay here in Victoria. But I find it, it's interesting, I'm finding Victoria getting increasingly, there's a lot more traffic, and it's just not the same place it was years ago. So I really aspire, to get out of here. I could see myself in kind of Parksville, possibly Mill Bay, Maple Bay area, just because it's very close to both Victoria and Nanaimo. But but I like the island, so I have a number of choices on the island between Victoria, Mill Bay, and maybe Parksville, Qualicum.
Thanks, Robin. Jason?
Can you hear me good?
Yep, perfect.
Yep.
I gotta be that, I apologize, but I gotta be that guy. I wouldn't change a thing. Our connectivity to the mainland, being able to travel, a smaller community we have an 8-year-old son going to school here is fantastic for him. The sports and athletics here is fantastic. You got the university right down the road for his future. We love boating, we love camping. To be honest, I've lived from Tassos to Victoria on the islands, throughout BC. I wouldn't change a thing. This is where we want to be. We love it here.
And I guess thanks, Jason. I'm next. As I mentioned earlier, of course, I was born and raised here, so I have an affinity to here. In fact, my family probably came out here in the 1880s, so I have a definite affinity. And my youngest sister, when she retired, moved to the Okanagan, West Kelowna, stayed there for about 3 years and got tired of the hot summer, or the cold winters and the smoky summers, and moved to Comox. So I'd have to say anywhere on the island. Okay, carry on, Lee.
Okay, great, thank you. I think there's a few people. Kathy, I'm not sure we heard from you on that one.
Oh, did I miss Kathy? Sorry. Are you there, Kathy?
We can't hear you, Kathy.
Got it, there. We went through the process of choosing Nanaimo with exactly what everybody's talking about. We wanted to make sure that we had access to transportation, including an airport. We wanted to make sure that there was centralized health care and a hospital available, and that it was affordable. If I was to pick another location where I'd like to be, those would be my criteria. And I would either go back to where I'm from, which is West Vancouver, which is not affordable, or potentially Oak Bay in Victoria, which equally is not affordable but has all of the amenities that I find appeal to me here at Vancouver Island. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. My apologies. Carry on, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to start moving into some more interesting stuff, and I'm putting up the next one, and in this case, this is not an individual exercise the way we did it, that everybody has to answer. But I would appreciate, hearing from most of you on this in terms of if you could pick 3. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, if you could pick 3 words that describe the personality that we're starting to talk about, and I would appreciate it if you would think of this from a business perspective, especially the personality of Nanaimo. 3 words. What would those 3 words be? And of course, there's a few words here that are disqualified, because especially where you live in Nanaimo, it's very easy to fall back on the fact that it's so beautiful, and there are mountains and ocean, and it's very friendly. So I've disqualified those words to push you a little bit out of that comfort zone, and think, again, a little bit more deeply around that business and investment side.
Okay, so we'll start with Zenny. Can't hear you, Zenny.
You're on mute, Zenny.
Sorry? Okay. Thinking from a business perspective, I guess the first one that comes is affordable, vibrant, and I wanted to use a word but I don't want to use comfortable, but I just think great community spirit. There we go. Okay?
Okay,
That's great.
Dave? Steve still there? There he is at the top of the screen.
You'll have to unmute, Dave.
Okay.
Hi, I've always felt that Nanaimo's untapped market, very accessible, and it's a perfect transportation hub. So those are my 3, I guess. Untapped, accessible hub.
Thanks, Dave. Andre?
Some of them have already been said, but I'll throw out a few more. Hardworking, no Stewart, but I think we've always come from a hardworking blue-collar kind of economy, and I think that continues. Potential, it was said untapped, that's probably the better word. Affordable and accessible were already said, but I like those 2.
Thanks, Andre. Doug, you're next.
Thank you. I'm struggling for single words and more like phrases. One is a little bit of a split personality, one footing today and one footing yesterday. I'm just going to type in my other 2 when they occur to me. I'm still struggling to get that. I think it's a good question.
Thanks, Doug. Chris? You're muted, Chris.
There you go.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. I had down Gateway that connected to the front door to so many of the island communities. I had the word connected as well to the Lower Mainland and markets really close, whether it's a 20-minute flight or an hour-and-a-half ferry. We're not far away from those large markets from a business perspective. I also had diverse in a variety of ways. We're not like Parksville, Qualicum with a lot of seniors. We have a mix of age groups. We have a mix of income levels. And we have a mix even of urban and rural communities. So diversity are diverse. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Jolynn?
I guess one of the words that comes to me is abundance. There's an abundance, a lot of opportunity, whether it's from a housing perspective, whether it's abundance in the nature around us. So abundancy is a word that I think of. I think another word is welcoming. I think that we're a big city that has, with a big heart. So I think that it's not like being in a place that you don't really know your neighbors, you do know your neighbors, and the business community is very attached to one another. We all know each other, we converse, we talk, so you're not in kind of isolated bubbles. So I like that part about it. And also, I think that it's also expansive. The city of Nanaimo, I mean, if you drive from one tip of it to the other tip of it, there's a lot of diversity within that area in its expansiveness. You've got the parkway, you've got either side of the parkway, you go from having rural properties along Jingle Pot to a downtown core with higher density. So I think that there's that expansive side to it. An opportunity to expand.
Thanks, Julian. Bob, you're next.
So great descriptors that are already been mentioned. The only piece I think I could add to that is supportive or collaborative. I think the business community, and Joanne touched on this, it is supportive and collaborative in Nanaimo, and that's certainly a great part of the personality here.
Perfect.
Thanks, Bob. Robin?
I would say I would start with inclusive. It's an inclusive city. I would say it's an innovative city and diverse. So I go with inclusive, innovative, and diverse.
Thanks, Robin.
Perfect.
Jason?
Can't hear you.
Okay, we're good now?
Yep.
Perfect.
I think to go a little bit of a different on a couple of them, but I think Connected is a good one. I know Vancouver and Ferry was mentioned, but I think the, understanding you have a port with access to the rest of the planet, I think, any waterborne cargoes, I think we're connected in other means as well, not just locally, but globally. With the airport connected to Vancouver, I think on a broader spectrum, I think we're very well connected. I think we're a little confused. Obviously, this working group's trying to help bring things together, but I think there is a bit of confusion as to what direction that is headed, and identifying that and figuring that out is going to be a big step. And the other one's misunderstood. From the outside looking in, we're finding there's not a lot of people understand or even fully realize what the Nanaimo is capable of. So I think, again, this group getting that message out and being part of that message is going to be a great asset to the community to grow.
Thanks, Jason. Amber?
Perfect.
You're muted, Amber.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you.
So nothing new to add to everything that's already been said, but I think 4 or 5 of the top things that really resonate with me, and I think this community is connected, accessible, affordable, collaborative, and relaxed as well. But I think that it's generally more relaxed.
Thanks, Amber. Kathy?
Everyone's picked all my words. The one thing that kind of resonates with me is the availability of land and opportunity. I'm not sure that's the right way to put it, but there is a lot of land here to develop on, that's both developed and undeveloped. And there seems to be a spirit of availability. Not everybody wanting to pick up on it though.
Okay, perfect.
So my 3 probably could be defined as in some of the other comments, but potential, undiscovered, and I struggled with this one because I thought it might indicate a negative context, but I don't think it does, and that's laid back.
Okay. So in kind of an easygoing kind of way though?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Those are great, and I really I recognize that, most of you did a little bit of digging in that, and this was a lot of really good content and information for us. So not everybody has to do this, but because I recognize recognized as I was recording what you were saying, a lot of you already explored some of your words in sentences. So if you've already done that, you don't have to worry about doing it again. But if there are any of you who would like to take your 3 words and use them in a sentence to describe Nanaimo, I'd love to hear from you on that.
I have one, but I'll let the others go first.
Okay?
So, Zenny, anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
You did a great job, Zane.
Well, our motto is gateway to the world.
Okay. Perfect. Andre? Can't hear you, Andre.
I'm okay.
Okay. Doug?
I think I'll pass
Okay.
this one, not quite sure.
Okay. Chris?
I'll pass as well.
Okay. Jolene?
I'll pass.
Okay. Bob?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Robin?
What was the question again? Sorry,
If you want to take your 3 words and use them in a sentence to describe Nanaimo.
Okay, I'll fire it off to you in a note.
Perfect.
Not using my 3 words, but I got something else. We are Canada's business gateway and playground.
Perfect. Amber?
I have anything to add.
Sorry, what was that? Nothing? Okay. Kathy?
Oh, pass.
Okay, so mine is more of a, I guess, a slogan than anything, but discover the potential of Nanaimo while enjoying a laid-back lifestyle.
Nice.
Not too much of a rowdy applause. Okay, it's all yours, Lee.
Okay, thanks very much. So moving on to exercise 3. The question I have for you should be on your screen. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. When you think about Nanaimo, and think about Nanaimo from not just a provincial, but a national and an international perspective, because best practices in economic development, particularly if you're looking at competing on an international basis, and it really is a globally competitive environment in doing this kind of work today. What are some of the other cities or regions, because Nanaimo certainly is part of a very dynamic region, what other cities nationally and internationally do you think would be competitors for Nanaimo when it comes to business development and investment and trade or tourism?
Okay, Zenny, you want to go?
Difficult question. I think that provincially we compete, let's say, if we're looking at tech industry and that, with probably the interior with similar sized cities that people are looking for. But I think this is an area that those that are involved with business right now will probably have better answers for. I just think, of us competing with similar sized cities within the province.
Okay, Dave?
Well, from the airport perspective, we like to think that we work with Victoria and Comox, and that the pie will get bigger if we cooperate. But from a competitive point of view, I feel like the Okanagan, competing with the Kelowna Airport, to get people to come, the airlines to come, that is a local competitor, I guess, with us.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Andre?
On the island, similar type communities up and down the island. In the Okanagan, we regionally we compete with them. If we're looking internationally, areas that are similar to our region, the areas like New Zealand, Australia that can pull money that's looking to resource investment and things like that. Those are always in the conversation.
Thanks, Andre. Doug?
Provincially, I would say Comox Valley. I don't have one nationally, but certainly internationally would be New Zealand and the east coast of Australia.
Thanks, Doug. Chris?
What comes to mind is Campbell River in terms of close proximity to our city and some of the similarities. Also think of Halifax and the port and certainly the coast sort of environment out there. And then when I think of international, I think actually down into Washington State and some of the tax incentives or just the benefits of being able to work to the United States versus Canada as a bit of a draw. So I see those three areas.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Sorry, Joe Lynn?
From a provincial perspective, I would think that probably Kelowna, maybe Kamloops, are areas that would be our provincial counterparts. I would say that nationally, it's kind of hard to say, but I would think that probably more so a few East Coast cities. There's not a lot of other cities that are our size in places like Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Their cities seem to be larger cities than ours. I think it's places like Saskatoon and they're 200,000, so I don't think that so much would be our competitor. And internationally, I agree with Chris. I think it's probably cities within the Pacific Northwest and those on the closer to the shoreline that would be port cities.
Thanks, Joanne. Bob?
So I think I'm probably in a similar vein. I believe our primary competitors are the cities around the Salish Sea. So Olympia to Campbell River, probably east to the Fraser Valley. I think those are our primary competitors when you consider all of the benefits we talked about for Nanaimo, both economic and lifestyle.
Thanks, Bob. Robin?
I would say cities in the Okanagan, just thinking of in terms of like universities, innovation hubs, tourism, small business, Maritime, Kelowna, Kamloops, Victoria, and uprising down Comox, Campbell River.
Thanks, Robin. Jason?
I think a lot of it's been said, the Seattle Tacoma on imports and exports, we see container volume go through there that's coming this way. We see project cargoes going up into our oil sands as a result of lack of infrastructure on the roadways, bridges, rail. So we know they're actively marketing those options over us. Auto, same thing, imports. New Zealand, Europe, forest products, I think Andre mentioned that. We're obviously, it's growing as a competitor in parts of the world. And as far as, you look at another sector in warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, we're seeing a lot of goods that come through this country and they come in through Vancouver, but they head up for warehousing and distribution up in Calgary and Edmonton. Right? So we see that rail link and those opportunities. So I think those are all, most of them have been mentioned, but we see as well.
Thanks, Robin. Amber?
Are you said Emma?
Yep.
Okay. So Kamloops, Kelowna, Prince George, and I think cities within the Northwest. Port cities.
Thanks, Amber. Kathy? Can't hear you, Kathy.
Sorry, I would ditto the Pacific Northwest as being competitors. Tacoma, maybe they do have larger ports down there, but I think people live there for similar reasons. And also the Niagara region from a tourism perspective and from a regional perspective of how they kind of work together.
Thanks, Kathy. So mine were, given the diminishing capacity in the Lower Mainland, I think we're in a pretty good position to compete more with them. With regard to nationally, our latest health challenge is forcing people to do things more remotely, which I think opens an opportunity for cities like Nanaimo to have people move here from larger centers to earn their living. And then I agree, Washington State, Oregon are probably the international competitors. Next, Lee.
Jim, may I add something?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, Zanny.
Zenny, I thought of it when we were thinking about tourism, and I thought just locally, we actually, where we compete and have struggled with, is we compete with Tofino and Victoria when it comes to attraction for tourism into Nanaimo. A lot of times we've been bypassed historically. So I think locally we have major competitors on the island itself for tourism.
Thanks, Zanny. Did I miss anybody else? Nope. It's all yours, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much. So this takes that last question to the next step, if you can see the question on the screen. And again, this is voluntary. If you have some thoughts to contribute to this, would love to hear from your perspective where Nanaimo needs to, and I think then you started to touch on this a little bit in terms of tourism, but where does Nanaimo need to improve its competitiveness compared with the areas that we've just been talking about in that last question?
Okay, so Zenny, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'll start off with just the tourism aspect. We have so much that's natural beauty, but I think we need to be able to market some of our attractions better. I mean, we have Newcastle Island, which is fabulous, but some type of something that draws people more to Nanaimo. And I know we've been working on this for years, so, but that's what I think we need to market ourselves better.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Dave?
Well, I've always felt that Nanaimo needed a clear vision of what it wants to be. I know that the town council was having some trouble for at least 10 years. I used to work in local government. Now there seems to be a lot more clear leadership at the city. And so I think clarity of vision is important. And from a tourism perspective, I think we need to market what is our product better. To me, it's not clear why we want people to come here from a tourism point of view.
Okay, and keep in mind this isn't just tourism, this is really about business and investment right across the board, but that's perfect. Thanks so much, Dave.
Andre?
Well, one of the things that we want to focus in on is cargo. From the airport, we are underachieving as it relates to cargo and shipping products either to here or away from here, and we think the airport is an opportunity for that.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Andre?
Thank you. So I think that something that most communities do have in ourselves is being investment ready. So having our products available they're all agreed to by the major groups and are all on the slide deck so that we can communicate it. Then step 2 of that would be to communicate and market those things. There's provincial trade reps all around the world who are looking for someone close to their contacts, and yet most communities can take advantage of that. But I think that we could probably just be more investment ready than we ever been. I also think just because of our geographic location, we should be very focused on improving our transportation infrastructure. Our future probably lies. We have a great region here on Vancouver Island, and we're centralized in acting as the hub or gateway, as Gas said earlier. Seems to be the right path forward, so we need their transportation infrastructure both across the island and to the mainland. And also, Nanaimo does have a branding issue, so getting the message out there for what Nanaimo is nowadays, I think is very important.
Perfect.
Thanks, Andre. Doug?
Okay, that's it, Jim. From now on, I'm going to go ahead of Andre because he keeps taking all my ideas. I think just to restate everything that Andre's just said, for competitiveness, we need to have better links to the Lower Mainland in whatever form they take. We just need to be able to move more people back and forth more cost effectively in more different ways in all weather patterns, etc. Is the first one. The second one, I'm going to draw from some of the comments that came in the previous conversation. We need to be better at giving a more concise, outward-facing view of Nanaimo. I think that somebody commented that we are misunderstood, and I believe that that's true. That we, diversity is a positive thing, but there is a downside to that too when people can't quite figure out where the points of connection are. So some consistency on that front would be important as well. I'll mute again.
Thanks, Doug. Chris?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've got anything new except that I picked up on that word misunderstood as well in relation to this question, and I think we just need to do a better job of sharing what Nanaimo does have to offer, how it is competitive on a number of fronts, and doing that in a unified way, that concise message that's been mentioned already. So, thanks.
Julian?
I think in some ways that, I guess I deal more with smaller business clients, and I know that kind of what I hear from them is that there needs to be a more expedited process for development, whether they're looking at business applications to do the leasehold improvements within their businesses and those types of things. And that's for new businesses coming to the community, if there was some kind of a concierge or a red carpet service that could kind of get them through the gamut of what they needed to do to expedite what they were wanting to do would be good. We've had businesses come from North Vancouver and places like that, and they found it difficult and lengthy to go through processes. So I don't know if we're always have that kind of what we see as welcoming or open process. Having ran a tourism business for a period of time, I can honestly say that I think it's how we position Nanaimo. We are the gateway, and we can use Nanaimo as what I would say is be a hub and spoke. People can stay here and they can go to Victoria for the day and come back, and they can go to Tofino for a day and come back, and they can go, just to Coons Market for a day and come back, or go to Newcastle, but they keep coming back, and they eat their dinner here at the restaurant, that they have their car rentals here, or they brought the ferry here, whatever it may be, their hotel rooms are here. And I think that we can't always be everything to everybody with having every amenity or every attraction, but we definitely have the ability to be the place where people base their holiday at and can see all the other amenities and things that are out in the island. I've had people come back for 5 years in a row from England and use our place as a base to see what they needed to see, and other businesses like that too. So I think that's kind of where we can go from a tourism perspective, is to say that we can be your home base.
Thanks, Julian. Bob?
I would say, and this kind of just adds to what's been said by a number of team members, I think we really need to develop a focus, and we need to determine what our competitive advantages are as a community, and then target market organizations that can take advantage of those competitive advantages. And I think that degree of focus is going to be necessary if we're going to be successful in terms of finding and accommodating new enterprises to Nanaimo. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Robin?
I think we can improve our investment readiness for the new and emerging sectors, particularly the tech center. When you look at all the opportunities that fiber technology brings in health innovation, educational technology. We've got a great university, a hospital, And I'm starting to see that some of the big American companies are placing some pretty strategic investments in places like Victoria and the Okanagan and obviously in Vancouver. So I think this could be a good opportunity for the Nanaimo in particular, just for all the other reasons that we talked about too, being accessible and affordable and attractive to labor.
Thanks, Robin. Jason?
Yeah, I think I'd echo some similar comments. With tourism, obviously, cruise has been a struggle over the years. We have some pretty serious heavyweights across the pond and down south. So we've taken a new position this year with a new person to try to create an identity for Nanaimo to come to Nanaimo, because most of what we're seeing is coming into Nanaimo and they go north south. Majority of passengers. So we're working locally, and I think that's another good point, is how do we become more marketable within the tourism sector. Investment readiness is another great comment, and I think a lot of that's property investment incentive. What programs are available to attract foreign investment? What properties have any sort of tax breaks? Is there something we can do to create economic zones through the industrial and commercial world to try and zone in on, is also what was mentioned earlier, using trade commissioners from not just the provincial side, but from the federal side. I recently attended an India group where a trade representative of the federal government had no idea, trade for India obviously, had no concept of that. And when we presented him with the port and deep sea options, he had no idea. So I think part of our, I said it earlier, the young people just don't know who we want. So it's having that investment readiness and then preparing it properly and taking it to the world using the channels that are out there, I think for us would be very positive. And given the investment climate following what's going on right now, the time, I think, is critical.
Thanks, Jason. Amber?
Thoughts with everybody else. So evaluating our investment readiness to see where are we? Are we at 50%? Another 50% investment readiness. Maintaining our competitive advantage. So what's our differentiation factor from other communities? A lot of communities tend to do the same thing, so we want to make sure that we're really communicating what is our competitive advantage. And also not just on looking at the FDI side of things, but also assisting companies that already exist. And I'm also looking at a GREEE program and looking at how do we help our existing companies to scale up, and focusing on the ones that are economic drivers versus ones that are economic.
Thanks, Amber. Kathy? Can't hear you, Kathy.
Right. My fault, pardon me. Marketing is one, and to improve the marketing to whoever we want to attract to. When we came here, I was a bit surprised that Nanaimo was a place you went through, you didn't stay. And now I think, after living here for a couple of years, I think there's a lot more benefit in looking at, once we identify the vision and the program, is then invest in the marketing to key strategic locations. The other one that I think is important for us to do is to continue to improve the infrastructure, and that's happening obviously with the airport, with the port, with our transportation networks that we have here. And the third thing that really strikes me about Nanaimo is it's looking dreadfully tired. And I think that if we spend some effort prettying up the place and making sure that our key investments include making sure that the place sparkles a bit, because it is still got remnants of kind of the tired old town that it was. And I think that we could, with probably some investment, improve those areas so the first impression and the pride in the city would continue to develop.
Thanks, Kathy. My comment is that given the foreign trade zone designation on the island, and I understand the port's short shipping proposal, I think distribution shipping is probably one of the things we should be looking at. And one of the impediments in my mind is the lack of sizable amount of industrial property. We need to look at that to expand asset. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Just ask a question, Mr. Chair. Is there a industrial land strategy, or is it that has been adopted by council and is moving forward?
Nothing, Bill, you can answer that one.
Yeah, so we're just in the process of updating our OCP and 5 other strategic plans. And as part of that, we've done a land inventory capacity study, which includes industrial. So we'll be presenting that to council hopefully late June, early July. And that identifies where the gaps are in terms of supply.
And does it talk about the opportunities? Where to go?
It does, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would that report include the airport?
And
For industrial land?
yeah, they spoke to Mike as part of it, and there's definitely mention of the airport. I think it talks about the amount of hectares we need for additional land and as to what we already have, and then it makes some recommendations as to where that land could be. So that's where it sits at the moment.
Thanks, Bill. Does anybody else have any questions on that before we go on? No? Okay, Lee, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So here's where we're going to continue building on this conversation. And in this case, and I think some of you have already touched on the potential answers for this one. And again, this is an open discussion. You don't have to answer. Certainly would appreciate hearing from you. But let's talk about a scenario where you have this really big eraser in your hands and you can eliminate something, anything about Nanaimo that you think should simply disappear. And you get to be honest, we're in the code of silence here, it's not going to go anywhere. And sometimes, being able to make improvements or changes or pivot with what you're doing is recognizing that sometimes there's something that you just need to give up and get over it. And so if there's something like that that's been on your mind, here's your chance to articulate it. So your eraser is in your hand, and poof, what is it that you're going to use it to make disappear?
Lee, just before we go forward, I just want to make, there is a code of silence concept, except this is an open meeting being recorded, so just so people are aware of that.
Okay.
So, the other thing is we cannot see everybody on the screen at the moment, so rather than having you put up your hand, I think what we'll do is just carry on with the process of asking each one individually, if that's okay, Lee? Because I can't see you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So Zenny, you're first.
Thank you very much.
Zenny, you're first on the list.
I think first. I like hearing the other ideas first.
How many at the bottom of the list do you want?
I don't know if you mean structurally within Nanaimo. I mean,
if what?
well, the Gene Burns building and A&B Sounds would just disappear.
Okay, then that's what it is.
Okay. Dave.
So the gateway to the south end of the Nanaimo, through the old highway, I can see that area is improving, but I really think that area needs to meet its full potential. It's got beautiful views, it's a great area, but it's underachieving, and that'd be the area that I would want to, not erase, but significantly improve.
Thanks, Dave. Andre.
Same as Dave. I like the idea of the rejuvenation improvement of the Nichols Criminal Highway downtown Nanaimo. I think that most people driving through Nanaimo have that as their impression, and it's kind of like your Hollywood stage. Normally you want everything behind the curtain. We put it right in front.
Thanks, Andre. Doug?
Thank you. I do have an answer for this. I think actually the little preamble to this conversation is important because we do have to have the courage to say things that need to be said and have public conversation. So my large eraser is going to be the Departure Bay Ferry Terminal. It's going to be scrubbed right off the map.
Thanks, Doug. Chris?
I go back to some of Kathy's comments about that tired look and also some of the comments about the south end of the city, but I would extend that to almost every major roadway in the city. To redo them, my work office is pretty close to the new roundabout at Labio, and that, I don't know the name of the street behind the auto dealership off Labio. I can't remember the name. It's the Chevrolet one. But it's got a great streetscape with the bike lanes, trees, grass, small parking spaces. I just think we could redo every major roadway in the city if I had an eraser. And then the other, I know I'm not allowed to have two, but I have two, is car lots. Sales lots. I think we're beyond that period where we have to have 100 or 200 cars facing our roadways, and that being sort of the advertising for major parts of our city. So much shopping is done online. I'm not sure why we can't do that with cars as well. So I'd remove those.
Thanks, Chris. Jolene?
I'm in agreement that I think from pretty much the Cedar underpass or overpass, continuing all the way up past Brooks Landing, needs to have a reboot and a facelift, pretty much that whole terminal corridor. And I also think that we have waterfront from the Sam's Funeral Home that continues all the way to the ferry landing. And I think that whole area could use improvements. We've got half burnt down buildings, it's kind of derelict-y. And those are two corridors to our community that really aren't very pleasing to the eye.
Thanks, Jolene. Bob?
So I would echo the comments regarding Terminal Avenue and the tired look. I think we do need to put in place plans and policies that can enable those areas to change. But my biggest eraser is saved for dealing in a realistic fashion with our homeless situation, because, and I get that it's not just a city problem, but I think the city needs to be part of the solution. We really do need to try and make some positive steps forward in terms of helping those citizens find alternate locations to live in a reasonable lifestyle. And I think that has a long-term effect in our community if we don't deal with it relatively quickly. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Robin?
I would agree with the terminal corridor. I think there's a lot of work that can be done there. It just doesn't have that nice breathtaking feel you have when you kind of discover Victoria for the first time, or when you drive into Vancouver. I think that kind of first impression leaves a lasting impression in people's minds, and that's where I think there needs to be some important infrastructure investments.
Thanks, Robin. Jason?
I think there's just a general persona. I think everybody's kind of tackling each individual component of it, but I think it's just this old persona that Nanaimo has of being, an under-appealing, crime-filled town. And I think that there's an old school belief of that. I think the city's come a long way, and I think being positive and finding fixes, as everybody's suggesting, is going to go a long way to getting rid of that whole mentality.
Thanks, Jason. Amber?
Along the Island Highway, there's a lot of places that are very sort of tired looking, those gas stations. It's great to get some brownfield remediation done on those and rejuvenate some of those sites. As well as, I think the car lots, there are just far too many right on the Island Highway. It's not all that appealing. I think we're sort of ready to move past that now. So if we could see some changes to that, I think it would really help the city look much more vibrant and better.
Thanks, Amber. Kathy? I can't hear you, Kathy.
He's got to pay more attention to that. The strip mall, where parking is on the street front and you got to go way back to find whatever it is you want to go to, and that they don't really embrace, it seems, good local shopping where you go from shop to shop. They're more destination oriented. So I'd get rid of the strip malls with the car lots.
Thanks, Kathy. So mine's a little bit different, and it comes from the perspective of a novice politician. I get really tired of anti-development citizens with negative opinions. I think we could go a long ways if we all had a little more positiveness in our thought process. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. That's incredibly important. And I appreciate the candor, because that's, that's really where we need to get to, as you know, which is why you're doing this process and understanding what does a pivot look like. And it means sometimes, leaving some of that behind while still being very respectful of the fact that, Nanaimo has an incredible history, but it also can have an incredible future going forward, and that's going to require some pivoting. So though we're not technically in a cone of silence, if you do have cone of silence issues you'd like to follow up or add to this discussion, call me anytime. I'm happy to hear it, or Steve, and share that with us. And I only say that because again, it's very difficult sometimes at public forums to get as candid as you want to be. But if there are additional things that you think of later on that you do want to share, please do feel free to reach out to us and talk to us about that. Okay, so the next one is, guess what? Now you have a magic wand. And so I think that you've already done a really good job in identifying those things that you would want to change substantively. And I really appreciate that comment, that last comment about addressing anti-development citizens and negative opinions. That's sometimes part of a culture of a community. And I've spent a lot of time in Nanaimo and will continue to. Sometimes when you have a bit of a tired or underperforming look and feel, whether it's physical, whether it's cultural, that can continue to lead to a bit of a negative approach to change. And so it's really hard to find that courage and step up and sometimes start with key projects and make those changes. So obviously we want to be able to give you all of the ammunition that you need in order to be able to do that going forward. So if you had a magic wand, and again, this is voluntary, if you've already expressed this, you think in that last piece, then let it rest. But if you had a magic wand and you could make something, anything appear in your community, whether it's something physical, something cultural, or whatever it is, what would it be?
Sandy, you've got your hand raised.
I did. So, back to the derelict buildings, what I would make appear is all the derelict buildings disappear and in their place become brand new opportunities rise and brand new buildings.
Okay, and so I have a question for you, Zenny. Don't go away up yet. So what would you put in those buildings, given the fact that, our historical understanding of retail, for example, including car lots, is disappearing? So what would you put in those buildings?
Well, the majority of derelict buildings I'm referring to are in our downtown area core, and my preference would be, some would be housing, some would be a community arts center for our city, some of it would be ice cream shops, mixed-use commercial businesses that enhance our city.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll carry on the list the same way, so that means Dave, you're next.
Okay, this one's easy for me. The Port Drive development would be complete down by the terminal there, and the boardwalk to Departure Bay would be constructed from downtown.
You got a thumbs up from Bill.
I've been on this for a long time, so.
Okay, next is Andre.
Passenger ferry downtown to downtown.
Perfect. Doug.
So this conversation is just starting to get interesting. I could jump easily on side with all the previous comments about dealing with terminal nickel. When we talk about branding, almost everything that the outside world knows and thinks about Nanaimo is what they see from driving down that street. But since I had suggested we remove the Departure Bay ferry terminal, which I think there's other solutions for the transportation component, we can build the walkway to Departure Bay and through the mixed-use redevelopment of that site, pay for it at no cost to the existing citizens.
Thanks, Doug. Chris?
I go back to Bob's earlier comment about housing, affordable, safe, adequate housing for every resident would be my number one. Number two, though, would be a Indigenous cultural space, one that is not owned and operated by any single Indigenous group, but is open and accessible to all Indigenous peoples in the area, as well as non-Indigenous community members, so that we can move forward the topic and conversation of reconciliation in our city.
Thanks, Chris. Jolynn?
Well, everybody's got really great ones, so I'm going to kind of go outside the box. As someone who commutes to work every day, I would love to see coal relief instead of stoplights on the parkway. And I would like to see access somewhere around the hospital district. There's that overpass. I think it's the Wellington overpass. Would there be access into the city somewhere from the Wellington overpass? And we'd have less congestion on Bowen if our city is going to grow and become have more inhabitants. I think we need to have more transportation accessibility and roads.
That would be East Wellington, Jolynn, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Bob?
I'm going to add my magic wand to Andre's. Fast ferry, I think, would be a very important win for the city. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Robin?
Oh, I was going to say fast ferry too. I'm looking at this from a university perspective. But I would say a world-class sport stadium, multi-use, that can be used by the university and multiple stakeholders within the region.
Thanks, Robin. Emmerich?
I'm hoping that after COVID-19, that our downtown core comes back stronger than ever, that we see more people living there, we have more diverse businesses, and it's a safe place. So I'm really hoping that that will come back in a big way.
Thanks, Emmerich. Kathy?
I agree with what
Go ahead.
I agree with what everyone has to say. The one thing that I think is just a continual improvement in the city's infrastructure that I think could be achieved through development, and make plans so that when anything is being done, that it's a real hard negotiation for the developers to work with the city, because the city has set its standards very, very high.
Thanks, Kathy. So mine magic wand would be to wave it over the provincial government to set up treatment centers for mental health and addiction issues to try to get rid of this significant challenge we have in Nanaimo as well as other communities in the province. All yours, Lee.
If I could, sorry, Jason here.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason, I missed you.
Oh, that's okay. You had kind of mentioned it earlier, I think, Mr. Hurley. Two things, if I can, is crew post-COVID, of course, and having things figured out. Something iconic in Nanaimo, something that we can leverage, as we say, the tourism industry on for the city. And the second one would be a vibrant viewpoint, something warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, so we can pay for all these fancy things we want in Nanaimo, make the city look good, provide some major job opportunities, and utilizing the port for short sea shipping, deep sea shipping, and having that access to that land with having the railhead right there, seeing the rail vibrant. That's my bit.
Thanks, Jason. All yours, Lee.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So this is, and I'm just looking at the clock and being mindful of our time, so I think we have just enough time left to have a good discussion about this one. And I understand there have already been some lively discussions around whether or not there are going to be changes in the world post-COVID. I spent a lot of time over the last 2 months working on a number of projects with international scopes associated with exactly those discussions. And I'll just give you an example. One of the best sessions I've had recently was with a group of international site selectors, and these are real estate professionals who help their corporate clients across a variety of sectors, everything from transportation and logistics to real estate to technology businesses, everything across the board, from low tech to high tech, industry 3.0, industry 4.0. And they're anticipating that the world is going to shift, not necessarily change significantly, but definitely shift in terms of a lot of the focus sectors that are going to take place, how companies are going to use real estate, what they're looking for, what kind of solutions, talent, and some of you have touched on these today. What is the new world going to look like with talent, affordability, technology, livability, all of those things? So I'd love to hear from you. Let's assume that there are going to be some changes in the world after 2020. If I had the big eraser, I'd probably erase 2020. But after that, what do you think this new world of opportunity is going to look like for Nanaimo? Because you're so I think, right in terms of you have tremendous opportunity going forward with all of the amenities and the beauty and the location and the access that you have. What are those opportunities for you, do you think?
So shall we go down the list of everybody again, or, because again, I can't see hands go up, so.
I think that's best.
I'll put my hand up.
That's Sarah, right?
So, yeah, I think one of the biggest changes, such as the Zoom meeting we're on, is that perhaps an opportunity is globally we can reach out, that there's a lot of work with the tech industry in that, where people will be working from home, or those businesses that, if we can attract them, the tech industry, and that the opportunities we have that is being spoken about today with affordability and being able to attract employees to a place where they can work and live, right? So I think there's going to be a huge shift in the way that we do businesses. I don't know if conferences will ever become a big deal again when people can all Zoom in on a meeting, and there's savings for businesses in doing it in that process. So that's what I think. We have opportunity here with working globally with people.
Thanks, Annie. Dave?
Well, I think the biggest issue is infrastructure development. We need to have more of it. So you got to be coordinated between the businesses and the local government. As far as changing the way things happen, we at the airport anyway, we see there's an opportunity now. The busiest entity out here is FedEx. and just moving products by air, at the port, wherever. We think that there is an opportunity there, but our biggest problem is we don't have the infrastructure to support it properly.
Thanks, Dave. Zenny, you raised your hand. Did you have something to add?
Yes, I did. And I guess what the world of opportunity will be for the city of Nanaimo is that so now you can do the online permit application. So those types of processes so there isn't the barriers and hurdles and the difficulties in being able to invest or being able to bring business here. So I think that's an opportunity that the city has to look at how we can streamline things for people.
Thanks, Zenny. Andre?
Thanks, Chair. I've been hearing from a few friends of mine who live in a small condo in Yaletown, and the question has been, so is that passenger ferry going? Because we're thinking about relocating through this quarantine. Nobody really wanted to be in their 500 square foot apartment or condo in Yaletown, and they look at what we have over here. Especially when they're not able to go to work and see as the opportunity to accomplish things without commuting. I guess if you could live anywhere, why wouldn't it be on Coquitlam Island? Why wouldn't it be in Nanaimo? I think we have a very good opportunity to attract that new wave of tourism.
Thanks, Andre. Doug?
So I think, if I can, the two things that I've noticed in all of the discussion about post-COVID, actually three. The first one is I will not be happy. I will not be unhappy when we get to a point when we're not having this conversation via Zoom. I would much rather be in the room. I think that change is overstated. But I think that there are a whole range of other changes in the world of transportation, in the world of shared transportation services that are going to fundamentally change things. So I read a piece at the beginning of the last crisis. Facebook was 4 years old. Amazon was 1/20th of its current size. And Apple made more money selling computers than they did selling iPhones at the last crisis. The change that's coming with COVID is the acceleration of that change. So whereas although all those changes in the rearview mirror took a decade, the rate of change that we're just embarking on now is going to be an order of magnitude faster than that. So we need to be ready for the idea that people are not going to be fussed about parking their car at the fast ferry. They're going to be looking for a shuttle, and who knows, maybe even within 18 months we'll have Uber in British Columbia. Those are the pivot points that I think we need to focus on. They're not incremental changes, they're fundamental changes.
Thanks, Doug. Chris?
I don't think I have anything to add here. Just to pick up on Zenny and Andre's comments about affordability and folks looking at options now that they're
Good. Thanks, Chris.
physical office, how they can continue to work from home.
You're breaking in and out, Chris. I don't know.
Sorry, Chris, you froze there for a moment. You might have to just repeat that. Sorry.
But just the opportunities that are being created by folks being able to work from home and where they decide them to make home, right? Whether it's the 500 square foot Yaletown apartment or something much larger here in the city.
Thanks, Chris. Jolene?
I think it's hard to kind of fathom where we may be going, but I think one of the things that we do know for sure is different forms of disruptive technologies are where we've been going and heading towards more and more. So as well as, I think a lot of that has to do with how much connectivity we have with the internet. And I think that, how do we bolster the ability to bring in more connectivity to our community and have more fiber optic and those types of things? Because if we're going to have that more connected world, we need to have more of that. I think also too, there's the world of logistics when we're talking about FedEx, and I think we're going to see more of that as I think bricks and mortar is going to change, and there's going to be more online and all those types of things. Well, how do we have the logistics to move those types of goods and get them from point A to point B? And so what does that look like? So, and it'd be interesting, and I don't know if this is even, we talk about which we will see as an opportunity. Well, maybe there's an opportunity for Nanaimo to actually host some of these thought leaders that you talked about. You have them come here and tell us what they think Nanaimo could be poised for.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joanne. Bob?
Well, I think post-COVID-19, all of us are going to rethink our personal priorities and reset some of them. And so I agree with others that have spoken before that one trend may well be a reversal of urbanization, which will result in workers and retirees looking to relocate to smaller communities, and I think Nanaimo is well situated to be the beneficiary of that kind of migration.
Thanks, Bob. Robin?
I think there's great opportunities in having Nanaimo brand itself as a hub for innovation, and just sort of more than just the fiber optic and the technology innovation that's needed, but in technical, social, and environmental, looking at opportunities around Indigenous entrepreneurship and innovations in healthcare, affordable housing. I think seniors living is going to be something demographically, but it's also a real call to action in terms of government and policy. Innovations in transportation, the innovative work we're doing with our correctional facility, and where all of the key stakeholders could play a part. I guess it would be almost like what it would be the criteria of a smart city. There's some pretty significant investments taking place in places like Peachland right now, where in fact investors are investing in this whole kind of holistic notion of what would be a smart city in terms of taking care of the citizens and looking at opportunities for investors and transition to work and all of those different kind of technical, environmental, and economic factors that would define what the new smart city would look like. And I think opportunity, Nanaimo is well placed for that kind of investment and opportunity.
Thanks, Robin. Jason?
I tackle maybe the government side of things. We find with funding and opportunities for government money, there's often a limited, but there's a criterion that you have to meet that sometimes it might be off by a little bit, but you may lose out on that opportunity or those fundings as a result of that slight differentiation between what you're offering your business case versus what's being funded through that business case. So I think maybe some flexibility in the provincial and federal governments and being more open to a business case that makes good business sense, although it may not be along the guidelines of what they may have, but having a broader base of open pool funds that more target what a community might find beneficial to them individually. So I think, when you're talking about accelerated funding, looking at business cases maybe a little bit differently and how they apply to each community specifically could be helpful.
Thanks, Jason. Amrit?
I think one of the most immediate things COVID-19 is more challenging to our area, more people living here and working remotely for companies based, for instance, in Vancouver, Silicon Valley. A lot of these people that live in those cities right now who think about moving here and living with it. I think that and also product shipping logistics. I think that's another big opportunity. I think those areas more COVID-19 for Nanaimo.
Thanks, Amrit. Kathy?
Thank you. I have sort of three main thoughts on that. One is related to the people and what's happened to our community and communities all around the world, is that people have have been asked to isolate themselves. So I think that creating a more social city in the future so that you can still feel or act in isolation, participate in isolation, but be a part of a social environment. So a social city perspective, I think we need to continue to work towards. The second part is where business restrictions that were forced upon business or practically businesses had to deal with them has moved to more online. I guess, again, it's that how do we make sure that there is some connectivity, business to business, small business to large business, government to business, and what does that look like? And a lot of that innovation, I think, is going to happen without a lot of investment, because people don't have the money, and it's going to take a lot of time to come up with some creative alternatives that aren't going to be expensive. And then the third thing is sort of the infrastructure development, and infrastructure from the physical infrastructure to kind of the architecture of the technological infrastructure is that I think there's going to be tremendous opportunities there, but we're going to need partners, and some of them are going to be non-traditional partners, and others are going to be the traditional partners, such as the federal government and the provincial government, saying we've got some money, we want you to invest it with these outcomes. And I kind of boiled it all down to sort of the triple bottom line. We've got to be socially responsible, environmentally responsible, but also fiscally responsible, and in a situation where we may not have face-to-face contact. So where does that take us? And how can Nanaimo, with all of its assets and benefits, supply that to business and to families to come here? That's my ramble.
Thanks, Kathy. So my comment, and you have to realize it comes from a male who hates shopping, but the best thing I've seen about this COVID scenario is that I can order online and do curbside pickup, which to me is great. I don't have to wander through a store, I don't have to spend time looking at things I really have no desire to have, and it saves time. So I think that can be a competitive advantage for portions of certain businesses going forward. If they've tried it out during this time, they have the opportunity of expanding it once we kind of get back to some sense of normalcy. But that isn't just a Nanaimo scenario, that's, I think, all around the world. But Nanaimo's approach could be that we need to, in certain areas of the city, provide street side availability for the curbside pickup. Anyway, that's my comment. Your turn, Lee.
Okay, that was fantastic. I really appreciate that you were patient with me as I poked and prodded your brains. I really appreciate that through this conversation there was an evolution of getting closer and closer to some key areas that are going to be really important for Nanaimo to consider going forward, including some significant and other subtle pivots that are going to be required going forward. I think you have every opportunity to do a lot of these things, obviously within the level of investment scope that a city of Nanaimo size has the ability to do. But keeping in mind that you're starting to enter an incredibly competitive environment for global investment and trade, and you've already identified that it's really important to focus on existing businesses and opportunities for them to invest in themselves and reinvent themselves and expand. So that's a really important focus going forward. But that competitive environment out there are a lot of smaller cities and regions that are ahead of this curve, and I can tell you don't have the same assets and opportunities that you do to be able to do this really well. And I started talking about this with my clients about 4 years ago, that we were approaching peak urbanization, and you already mentioned this, Bill. So we are, for the first time, 2.5 years ago, we started to see evidence of de-urbanization, and that's where technology has leveled the playing field for Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities and regions to be able to attract, talent and technology companies of various sizes and scales and scopes and interests, and international companies that never had a chance to play in those arenas before. So again, these are some of the things we look forward to talking about with you as we continue to develop these strategies. Thank you very much for your patience today.
Thanks for the presentation, Lee. Appreciate that. Anything to add, Bill?
No, thanks so much, Lee. Do you want to just discuss how you're going to use this information going forward?
Yeah, next steps, probably Steve. Do you want to take a moment and review that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Lee. Yeah, I mean, it's just another step in, the process, the phase 1 research process that we're going through. I mean, this is sort of a kickoff, if you will, for our engagement phase. So we've got a lot of feedback from our surveys. We're going to have the focus groups, of course, and we're going to have the workshops. So I think it's just another avenue, and it's just another information source for us, because we do need to, and I think it's been helpful for me to listen to this. I've been taking notes, of course, but I do think we need to drill down on this specific issue, the USB issue. We need to drill down and come up with those differentiators and that vision you guys were talking about, because it's fundamental not just for tourism and for investment attraction, but for local, even things like local, for the local development industry, for example, which has a big role to play in things like infrastructure development and whatnot. So we'll be taking this, we'll be crafting in the preliminary report. So we have two main reports here. We got the current situation report, and then we have the strategic plan at the end. We'll be taking this and we'll be distilling and synthesizing this down and coming up with sort of a proposed ESP for you guys in that first report. So we'll be working on that over the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So next on the agenda is, and I realize we're running out of time, but we did start a bit late, economic development strategy, next steps. Bill.
That's what Steve just covered off, actually. So that's.
I should have been listening.
So we're good. Yep.
Okay. So is there any other business anybody wants to bring up at this time? Yes, Jason, go ahead. You're muted. Oh, there you are.
It's Steve here. Bill, I just wanted to reiterate that we are anxious to get our hands on, the contact list from the task force and the logistics for the focus group. So hopefully we can avoid a Zoom meeting for those focus groups, and hopefully we can hold them in June. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So we've circulated the list to the group, and we've got some feedback on it. So we should have that list to you in a day or two with the top 100 people for the contact list. And Alyssa has booked room in the conference center where we can social distance and keep people apart for the focus groups. So I think that's June the 17th and 18th at the moment, tentatively.
Okay. Jason, you have your hand up.
Yeah, if I may, on that list of 100, I'm just wondering, we kind of talked about in our last discussion about having it sectorally driven. On that list, is there a way to break that down sectorally to see how it's being covered? I mean, maybe I'm out, but I'm just wondering if maybe understanding how each sector is covered off within that list to make sure that it's on point of of what's going on. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, it does. The one area that I thought that I didn't see too much representation from was the banking industry. So I'm looking at trying to figure out who would be a good candidate for that. But yeah, most of them I think on the list have business attached to them, if I recall correctly. If they don't, then we need to either email me, because I may know them, or the city may have information on who they represent. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, just maybe a better understanding of how each sector is represented on that list, so there's fair representation.
Yeah.
Your tech sector, your industrial here, your tourism, all those kinds.
Okay, great. Andre, your hand up.
Just a quick question on the next steps. I know that one of the next steps is going by industry group and talking by industry. Now, I think that's a good idea, but I don't know if that would fully capture all, because in hearing kind of everybody's comments today, I think it's very clear that there's going to be some strategies that not only were in previous economic development strategies, but most likely will be in this one, including being investment ready, expanding our transportation infrastructure. And is there a point having a discussion around those tactics, like expanding transportation infrastructure, getting all the key transportation people together to talk? I'm not sure if that's covered by our industry topics, but I think it's important for a reason.
I didn't catch
Yeah, it's Steve here. I think we can, we still haven't pinned down the exact, the exact final list of themes, but Lee and I are completely wide open in terms of what those themes are. So if we feel the need for transportation infrastructure as opposed to transportation as an industry, so there is a distinction there. We want to focus on transportation infrastructure, and that could be public infrastructure mostly, I would assume. Then yes, we could certainly, we were amenable to having a session on that if you guys think it's important. So I want to stress that it's a task force. We're looking from direction for the task force on what those key themes, focus group themes should be.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else have any questions, comments? I don't see any hands go ahead. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to put my hand up, but then I thought I'd just unmute the mic. It was quicker. I'm not quite sure how to engage in this conversation about focus group themes. I have reached out to a few people trying to make sure that these focus groups are not starting from a standing start. And I thank Andre for getting us started on this conversation here. There is a significant body of work over the years in terms of economic development, and it would be my preference to have focus groups which are focused around specific strategies or specific actions or something that we don't have to start at the very first square on the board. And I think, as a matter of fact, in some of these, we're actually quite close to being able to finish. And one, for example, and it may or may not be appropriate, but just for example, is the idea of a downtown to downtown passenger foot ferry. Well, there's a whole 2 decades of history there, but it's still a significant unfinished task. Couldn't one of the focus group themes, for example, be how do we get that thing off the ground? As an example, as another example, the last question we went through was specifically about competitiveness, and some of those things are, the seeds of those are in the previously existing economic development planning documents. And I think we need to go further than just saying we're going to have sector-based focus groups. I think that we should try and find ideas that people are actually going to be excited about and be prepared for. They're going to come into the meeting either with and some people who you choose for the focus group may be completely invested in the idea, and others may be from the outside. I think there's lots of ways to put that together. But to get a meaningful, practical output, I think that whatever the list of themes are, needs to be sorted out and refined to a level that's more than just saying we're going to have transportation. I'll mute again.
Thanks, Doug. Anybody else? Okay.
So if I can just understand,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Kathy.
Chair, if I can just understand, so Doug, what you're looking for is we already know what one of the boxes is going to be you're suggesting. So you're looking for what are the solutions, what are the collaborations, like how to action that going forward, rather than come up with another list that then we have to go through that process and start all over again. Is that correct?
That is what I'm not presenting a solution, I'm presenting a concern. And my concern is that if we have, or if we just pick away at this one idea for a little bit further, if we have a workshop which is on the transportation sector, then we're gonna, I don't believe that we're going to get, we're not going to be able to advance the ideas. We're not going to come, when it comes down to writing this report, I'm hopeful that those, let's say 8 focus groups each focus group is a specific strategy, it's a specific action, it's a specific theme, and the outcome, along with everything else, of course, is the content that goes into the report or the sort of detailed inputs on those specific items. So another one, like we've talked about branding or being misunderstood, or that can be a theme, I think. But let's get people in the room who are able to really. So I don't feel like it's a focus group in the sense that we're selling soap and we want to find if people like the smell of the soap. It's a focus group with it's a short burst of high level access to people with some significant inputs. And again, I'll pause there.
Okay. Jason, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've talked about internally is creating new ideas, new thoughts, new opportunities, different, not the same. I think a lot of what we talked about is how do we inject some sense of not what we have done in the past, but bring new thoughts and ideas forward and new ways to try to achieve them. I'm not sure if what the focus group is the right way to do that, but I think getting in, and why I asked about the sectoral breakdown was when you look at the names of the people on the list, how much of that list, given my newness to the group and the community, are there vibrant people on there? Are they people who have not been used to the old way? Like, how do we create a vibrant group, I think, with new ideas? It's, I think, very important.
Thanks, Jason. Andre?
Just to touch on a little Jason's point there, I do like the idea of keeping food strategies, maybe sectoral, some of them strategy-based. Like it's a strategy which may well be to continue to act as a hub for Vancouver Island. We take our large employers, whether it's the university, the hospital, and we talk about how do we continue to offer services to the island wide and maintain our competitive advantage as a regional hub. If it comes to being the most consumer-ready city in Providence, that's probably going to be a type of strategy somewhere in those lines. So I want to advance that strategy with those who have realtors, those in the city who have access to land. So it's a sector, it's a kind of strategy hybrid. So I like what that was saying.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll work with Steve and his team and come back with an outline for the focus groups so that then you can sign off on it before we get those organized.
Thanks, Bill.
If I could just, Mr. Chair, one of the techniques that used a lot in my career was at the end of any time that you're consulting with someone, whether it be in a meeting you'd like to say. Because usually you get a whole bunch more stuff, like a lot of, I hate this, I hate that. But there also are often gems in there where people will come up with some ideas that haven't been, put forward before. And I found that that's been a very successful way to also make sure that people are included when it may not be right up their lane, but they may have something else that they want to put on the table for, not for discussion, but just for information. That's worked for me.
Thanks, Kathy. Any final words? Hearing none, we need a motion, unless there's anything else we need to deal with. Motion to, yes, Eddie? We can't hear you.
Motion to
I
adjourn.
think that's what you're trying to say. Second by Andre. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.